Now, 5 Afghan children have been injured in an attack by a British Apache helicopter while they were working in a field in Helmand province on Saturday, where UK forces were targeting an insurgent on a motorcycle nearby. Almost 1,500 civilians have been killed this year, which is already the deadliest since the war started in 2001. Let's talk more with Lindsey German from the Stop the War Coalition. Thank you very much, Ms. German, for being on the program. Now, more child casualties here as a result of NATO operations. And we know that that is something that won't be lost on President Karzai, who's already livid at a lot of civilian injuries and losses. So what other reaction can we expect from this latest incident?
Well, I think that it will just convince more people in Afghanistan that the war isn't helping them, but it is actually killing and injuring more and more people. As you said in your introduction, the latest UN report shows the last 6 months have been the most deadly since the war in Afghanistan started for the civilians. And the real problem, I think, is that we have to make this an issue not just in Afghanistan, where people are very aware of what is happening, but also here in Britain, where much of this news isn't very much reported.
All right, well, for NATO's part, though, the military coalition in Afghanistan, they did promise to reduce civilian casualties. Are we seeing that it's not actually working?
Well, actually, the policy of the Americans in the last year has been to increase airstrikes, and therefore the civilian casualties have increased, at least in part, because of this. So it isn't working, it isn't going to work. When you have a war where there is a growing insurgency, there will be all sorts of people who are victims of this, and children are obviously one of the worst sort of casualties. The only solution to this is to say that the war isn't working. There is absolutely no justification for the NATO forces to be there, and that they should withdraw the troops. This is now coming up to the 10th anniversary of the war, and there is absolutely no question that this war is not getting better, it is getting worse.
Okay, well, whenever there are civilian deaths like this, the coalition forces do present the other side of the picture, and they do point to successes like killing up to 80 insurgents in a raid last week. And unfortunate as it is, are heavy strikes the only way to root out deep-seated militancy? I mean, how else do you do it?
Well, I think we have to look beyond this picture. Allegedly, in 2001, the Taliban was defeated. It was the Taliban government was overthrown by the initial stage of the war. The Taliban have now come back and are very, very strong. So, in a way, the whole question about whether you can kill 80 insurgents or anything else, you have to ask, why are the insurgents growing? Why are they there in the first place? The whole strategy of handing the country over to the Afghan army and police is clearly failing, and failing badly. So there has to be an honest assessment of what is happening in this war, and the honest assessment of what is happening in this war is that far from it ending terrorism, far from it bringing democracy, it has spread to Pakistan, where there are more and more drone attacks. It is a war which has not brought democracy. Afghanistan is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And the truth is, the NATO presence, the NATO forces, are not part of the solution here.
Well, speaking about that transfer of control there from NATO troops to local troops, Afghanistan is still far from stable as the troops withdraw. So how likely do you think it is to endure a return to Taliban control? And you said earlier that this withdrawal is actually failing.
Well, the Taliban have grown in strength. The Americans are talking to the Taliban. It is almost certain that whatever settlement eventually comes in Afghanistan, it will involve the Taliban in some capacity. Nearly everybody now recognises this. So what is the point of continuing this war? The point of continuing this war is because the Americans and the British and their allies cannot admit defeat in a second country after what happened in Iraq. That is why they're there. They are there in order to prop up a government that they have no real confidence in. They are there in order to save their own faces. They are there to protect their interests. They're not there to protect the ordinary Afghans. And we've seen this again this week.
All right. Thank you very much for your insight there. Lindsey German from the Stop the War Coalition. Thank you.